The crimson dust swirled around Dr. Sarah Chen's boots as she made her way through the newly excavated tunnel beneath the Martian surface. Her headlamp cut through the darkness, illuminating walls that shouldn't exist, smooth, engineered surfaces that predated all known civilization by millions of years. Dr. Chen, you need to see this. Marcus, her assistant, called from further ahead. His voice carried an unusual tremor that made Sarah quicken her pace. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Her team stood frozen, lights pointed at the far wall where impossible images were carved with precision that put modern laser cutting to shame. The scenes depicted showed humans, unmistakably humans, working alongside creatures that resembled modern laboratory equipment. Initial dating puts these walls at roughly 300 million years old, Marcus said, his handheld scanner humming. That's not even the strangest part. Sarah approached one of the carved panels, her gloved hand tracing the outline of what appeared to be a DNA helix. These symbols, they're not just artistic representations. These are accurate molecular diagrams. She moved to the next panel. And these are genome sequences. The chamber hummed to life around them. Lights, dormant for eons, began to glow with a soft blue luminescence. Sarah's team instinctively backed toward the entrance, but she remained transfixed by what was happening. Power signatures detecting throughout the complex, reported Dr. Yuki Sato from her position near the entrance, her eyes fixed on her tablet. It's like the whole place is waking up. Sections of the wall began to slide apart, revealing sealed compartments. Inside each one, perfectly preserved behind crystalline barriers, were laboratory samples, tissue samples, cellular cultures, and what appeared to be intact DNA helixes suspended in transparent medium. Sarah's hands trembled as she took readings. "This is impossible," she whispered, but her equipment didn't lie. These samples, they're human, not just similar to human DNA. They are human DNA. Perfect matches to modern human genetic markers. That can't be right, Marcus argued, moving to verify the readings himself. Humans didn't exist 300 million years ago. We evolved from primitive mammals after the dinosaurs went extinct. Apparently, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was discovering, we didn't. A holographic interface sparkled to life in the center of the chamber, projecting images that moved with fluid grace. They watched as figures in advanced environmental suits, clearly human in form, worked in this very laboratory. The recordings showed them analyzing, cataloging, and storing genetic samples. They're not just studying DNA, Dr. Seto observed, her expertise in xenobiology evident in her analysis. They're engineering it. Look at the modification sequences they're implementing. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as the implications hit her. We're not looking at a record of our evolution, she said. We're looking at our origin point. These weren't visitors to Mars. They were us. Humanity didn't evolve naturally on Earth. We were here first, on Mars, with technology beyond what we have today. The hologram shifted to show a larger scene. A sprawling city beneath the Martian surface, filled with life and technology. Then it showed Earth, but not the Earth they knew. It was Earth as it existed hundreds of millions of years ago, being prepared for something. My God, Marcus breathed. We didn't start on Earth. We relocated there. Sarah's mind raced with questions. Why did humanity abandon this advanced civilization? Why move to Earth? And most importantly, why did they seemingly start over from scratch? Her radio crackled with an urgent message from the surface team. Dr. Chen, We're picking up massive energy signatures. Whatever you activated down there, it's not just happening in your location. Similar sites are lighting up all across Mars. And we're getting readings from Mercury, Venus, and the moons of Jupiter. They're all carrying the same signatures. Sarah looked at the hologram, still showing the ancient city. "Contact Earth," she said firmly. "Tell them everything we thought we knew about human history just changed. And I have a feeling we're only seeing the beginning." The United Nations Security Council has called an emergency session following the unprecedented discoveries on Mars. The news broadcast echoed through the makeshift command center as Sarah examined the latest data streams from sites across the solar system. 2 weeks had passed since the initial discovery, and each day brought new revelations that shattered accepted history. The Martian facility had been just the beginning. Mercury's dark side had revealed vast energy collection arrays, still functioning after millions of years. Venus's toxic atmosphere concealed orbital platforms that seemed to be terraforming monitors. Even Saturn's rings contained artificial structures, disguised as natural debris. "They're trying to suppress this," Marcus said, dropping a tablet on Sarah's desk. The screen showed classified military movements leaked by someone inside the government. Chinese, American, and Russian space forces are being mobilized. They're calling it a security operation. Sarah didn't look up from her work. They can try, but it's too late. The facilities are activating faster than they can contain the information. Look at this. She pulled up a 3-dimensional map of the solar system, now dotted with hundreds of glowing points. These aren't just random outposts. They're part of a network. Dr. Sato burst into the room, her usually calm demeanor shattered. The Europa site is active. The ice sheet just opened. There's a facility bigger than anything we found so far. The screens around them flickered as new data poured in. The Europa facility wasn't just another outpost. It was a hub, connecting all the others. As they watched, energy signatures began pulsing between the locations, following patterns that seemed almost organic. "Look at the transmission frequencies," Sarah pointed out. "They're not just communicating, they're waking each other up." Marcus leaned closer to the displays. But why now? These sites have been dormant for millions of years. What triggered them? "We did," Sarah replied, pulling up genetic analysis from the Mars samples. "The facilities aren't just responding to our presence. They're responding to our level of advancement. We've finally reached a technological threshold that our ancestors programmed them to recognize." The room fell silent as a new alert flashed across their screens. Satellite imagery showed something emerging from Venus's cloud cover, a structure that dwarfed anything humanity had built in space. "It's some kind of observatory," Dr. Sato whispered, analyzing the readings. "But it's not looking at stars. It's scanning for something else." Sarah's tablet chimed with a priority message. Her face paled as she read it. "They found something in the human genome. All of our genomes. Dormant sequences, millions of them, perfectly preserved through every generation. They're not random mutations or junk DNA. They're data storage." "You mean our ancestors encoded information into our DNA?" Marcus asked. "Information that survived all this time?" "More than information," Sarah said, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "Instructions. Memories. Everything they knew, preserved in every human being alive today. The facilities aren't just waking up. They're waiting for us to wake up too." A deep rumble shook the command center. Outside, the night sky blazed with sudden light as dozens of objects broke atmosphere, descending toward Earth's surface. Not meteors, ships. ships of designs that seemed to merge technology with organic forms, each one larger than an aircraft carrier. "They're ours," Sarah breathed, recognizing patterns that matched the Martian carvings. Part of the ancient fleet returning home. Military channels erupted with chatter as defense systems worldwide targeted the vessels. Sarah grabbed her radio, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Don't fire. They're not invading. They're responding to a recognition signal in our DNA. We're their crew." As if in response, the ships halted their descent, hovering silently above major cities across the globe. From each vessel, a message began broadcasting in every human language simultaneously. "Children of Earth, you have reached the first milestone. Your trial period of isolation is complete. It is time to remember who you were, who you are, and why you chose to forget. The galaxy awaits your return, but first, you must understand why you left it." Sarah looked at her team, seeing the same mix of terror and wonder in their faces that she felt. "This isn't just about discovering our past," she said. "We're about to learn why humanity chose to start over, and what we were running from." The massive vessels hanging above Earth's cities had maintained their silent vigil for 3 days when everything changed. Sarah stood in the Pentagon's newly established Ancestral Contact Center when the first anomalous readings appeared. Dr. Chen, a junior analyst, called out, "Multiple objects just appeared beyond lunar orbit. They're not ours." The holographic display showed hundreds of ships materializing from what appeared to be fold space, designs as varied as the cosmos itself. Some were crystalline structures that caught and reflected starlight, others seemed to be living vessels of flesh and metal, and still others defied conventional physics altogether. General Hayes strode into the center, his face grim. "We're receiving a transmission. They're calling themselves the Galactic Council." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a chamber filled with beings of startling diversity. The speaker, a tall, ethereal creature with iridescent skin, addressed Earth directly. "We are the children of the shepherds," it said, its words automatically translated. "We have spent millennia searching for those who seeded the stars with consciousness, who guided us from primordial soup to sentience. We never imagined finding you hidden here, masked as an emerging civilization." Sarah stepped forward. "You're saying humanity was responsible for your evolution?" "Not just ours," another council member spoke, this one appearing as a swirling cloud of intelligent gas. "Every spacefaring race in the known galaxy carries the mark of human guidance in their development. Your genetic algorithms are embedded in our very beings." The room erupted in murmurs as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just been advanced, they had been the architects of galactic civilization itself. "But that's not why we've come," a third council member said, its crystalline form pulsing with internal light. "We've come because of what follows us." General Hayes straightened. "What do you mean, what follows you?" The council members exchanged looks of what could only be described as fear. The same thing that forced your ancestors to hide. The same threat that made them choose to devolve, to become primitive again, to hide their true nature even from themselves. The ancient ships above Earth's cities suddenly activated, their organic mechanical forms shifting in response to some unseen signal. New holographic displays appeared in the control center, showing astronomical data that made Sarah's blood run cold. "Something's coming through the dimensional barrier at the edge of the solar system," she announced, reading the data. "Something big." The council members' next words sent chills through everyone present. They never stopped hunting you. The Void Minds remembered that humanity alone refused to submit to their collective. They remember that you chose to guide rather than control, to nurture rather than dominate, and they have never forgiven that choice. Warning signals blared as the dimensional tier grew larger. The ancient human ships moved into defensive positions, their presence suddenly feeling less mysterious and more desperately necessary. "You must remember," the ethereal council member pleaded. "Your ancestors hid you here not in shame, but in strategy. They seeded the galaxy with life, with consciousness, with potential allies. They stored their knowledge in your genes, waiting for the day you would be ready to face the void mines again. We are your legacy, and we have come to stand with you." Sarah watched as the council ships moved to join the ancient human vessels in their defensive formation. Across the globe, the dormant genetic sequences in human DNA began to activate, responding to the proximity of the threat that had forced their ancestors to such desperate measures. As the first tendrils of darkness began to emerge from the dimensional tier, Sarah understood the true magnitude of their discovery. This wasn't just about learning humanity's past. It was about facing the ancient enemy that had forced them to hide that past in the first place. "Send word to every government," she ordered. "Tell them it's time to remember not just who we were, but why we chose to forget. The void mines meant to find a weakened Earth. Instead, they're about to face humanity and every race we helped create, united for the first time in millions of years." The darkness continued to pour through the tier, but Earth wasn't defenseless anymore. The time for hiding was over. The Europa facility stretched before Sarah's team, a vast underground metropolis preserved in crystalline ice. They had less than 12 hours before the Void Mines forces would reach Mars, and humanity's greatest archive might hold the key to survival. "The preservation is perfect," Dr. Sato said, her voice echoing through the ancient halls. The ice didn't just preserve the facility, it preserved the data crystals, the biological samples, everything. Sarah approached what appeared to be the central console, its surface responding to her touch with an immediate glow. The genetic memories awakening in humanity had given them instinctive understanding of their ancestors' technology, but this was different. This was their legacy in its purest form. "Initialize historical archive," she commanded, and the chamber transformed around them. They stood suddenly in space, watching as the first human ships ventured out from Earth millions of years ago. The recording showed their ancestors discovering the profound emptiness of the galaxy. No other intelligent life, no sign of civilization. "We were alone," Marcus whispered, watching the history unfold. Completely alone. The scene shifted, showing human scientists seeding worlds with engineered life, carefully guiding evolution on thousands of planets. They watched as humanity took on the role of cosmic gardeners, patiently nurturing nascent intelligence wherever it showed promise. "Look at their methods," Dr. Sato noted, her xenobiologist's eye catching subtle details. They weren't forcing evolution. They were suggesting it, offering possibilities rather than dictating outcomes. The archive showed the rise of the first non-human civilizations, guided but not controlled by humanity. Each species was allowed to develop its own culture, its own path, with humans serving only as gentle mentors. Then the images darkened. A massive void appeared at the galaxy's edge, a tier between dimensions. From it emerged the void minds, beings of pure consciousness that had transcended physical form. They saw worlds falling silent as the void minds absorbed entire species into their collective, erasing individuality and free will. "Stop playback," Sarah ordered, her heart racing. "Access defensive strategies." The archive shifted again, but a warning flashed across the chamber. Full access restricted. Genetic verification required. "We don't have time for this," Marcus started, but Sarah was already moving to a biological interface panel. DNA sample required, the system announced. Sarah pressed her palm against the panel, wincing as it drew blood. The chamber exploded with light. Data streams poured through the air around them, and Sarah felt knowledge flooding into her mind. She saw the full truth of humanity's choice to hide on Earth, not just the threat they faced, but the brilliant strategy behind their apparent progression. "They didn't just hide us," she gasped, understanding flowing through her. "They hid our potential. The void mines consume advanced civilizations, but they ignore primitive ones. By devolving ourselves, by hiding our technology and storing our knowledge in dormant genes, we became invisible." "But why seed the galaxy with life?" Dr. Sato asked. "Why risk drawing attention?" "Because we needed allies," Sarah replied, the ancient memories crystallizing in her mind. "The void mines can't be fought with technology alone. They consume technology, adapt to it. But they can't adapt to diversity, to billions of different evolutionary paths, different ways of thinking, different approaches to consciousness itself." The facility rumbled as more systems activated. Beneath the ice, vast machines began to power up, their purpose now clear to Sarah. "This isn't just an archive," she said, understanding flooding through her. "It's a nexus point, a way to coordinate all the species we helped create. Our ancestors knew that when the time came to face the void mines again, we would need every one of them." Her tablet chimed with an urgent message from Earth. The void mines had reached Mars, their dark tendrils already probing the ancient facilities there. "Send word to the Galactic Council," Sarah ordered, watching as Europa's systems came fully online. "Tell them it's time to implement the Legacy Protocol. Our ancestors left us everything we need, not to fight the void mines, but to unite against them." The chamber hummed with power as humanity's greatest archive prepared to fulfill its true purpose, not just as a repository of knowledge, but as the command center for the most diverse resistance force the galaxy had ever seen. Deep within the Mars defense perimeter, Sarah watched as the Vextar fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Unlike the other Council species, the silicon-based beings had refused to join the unified defense. Instead, they had come with weapons charged. "This is Admiral Vecthrax of the Vextar Dominion." The transmission crackled through the command center. "We reject the notion of human precedence. Your claims of being the precursor race are lies, and we will not allow this deception to continue." The Vextar ships, crystalline structures that pulsed with devastating energy, moved into attack formation. Their technology, refined over thousands of years, had made them the Council's military powerhouse. Now that same power was turned against Earth. "They're targeting the archive sites," Marcus reported, tracking the weapon locks. "They're going to try to erase the evidence." Sarah's hands flew over the ancient console, now fully integrated with modern systems. "They're not just afraid of our history," she said, understanding dawning. "They're afraid of how fast we're remembering. Their society took 10,000 years to reach their current level. We're reclaiming millions of years of advancement in days." The first Vextar strikes hit the Martian surface, targeting the facility where everything had begun. But something unexpected happened. The beams of energy were absorbed, redirected, transformed. Ancestral defense systems online, the facility's AI announced, its voice resonating through human genetic memory, implementing adaptive protocols. Dr. Sato stared at her readings in amazement. The facilities, they're not just defending themselves, they're learning. Every attack makes them stronger. The Vextar Admiral's voice betrayed his shock. "Impossible. Our weapons are perfect, mathematically perfect." "That's why you'll lose," Sarah transmitted back. "You built your civilization on rigid patterns, on mathematical certainty. But life isn't certain. Evolution isn't perfect. That's what humanity understood millions of years ago. The power of imperfection, of adaptation, of change." More Vex starships arrived, their crystalline forms darkening the Martian sky. But they weren't alone. The other council races had kept their promise, positioning their fleets to defend Earth and its facilities. Each species brought their own unique approaches to combat, their own evolutionary advantages. "You engineered these lesser species," Vecthrax sneered. "You admit to manipulating their evolution. How are you any different from the void minds you claim to oppose?" Sarah watched as the battle unfolded, as each species demonstrated exactly why the Admiral was wrong. "We didn't engineer them to be weapons or tools. We gave them choices, chances, possibilities. Look at how they fight, each in their own way, each bringing something unique. That's not manipulation, that's cultivation." The Vextar fleet launched its full assault, their perfect formations executing flawless attack patterns. But perfection proved to be their weakness. The combined forces of the council races responded with beautiful chaos. Strategies that evolved mid-battle, tactics that defied mathematical prediction. "Their ships are approaching Europa," Marcus warned. "If they breach the archive." "They won't," Sarah said with certainty. She felt the genetic memories surge, guiding her hands across the ancient controls. "Because now we remember what our ancestors knew. The greatest strength isn't in perfection. It's in diversity, in adaptation, in the beautiful imperfection of life itself." The archive's defenses activated, not with destructive force, but with something far more powerful. Waves of energy washed over the Vex starships, carrying within them the genetic history of countless species, countless paths of evolution, countless ways of thinking and being. The crystalline ships faltered as their rigid, perfect systems encountered something they couldn't compute, the glorious irregularity of organic evolution. In their pursuit of technological perfection, the Vextar had forgotten their own origins as living beings. "Stand down, Admiral," Sarah transmitted. "Not because we're stronger, but because we remember what you've forgotten. Every species, even yours, has something unique to offer against what's coming. The void minds are almost here. We need all of us, every different way of thinking, every evolutionary path, if we're going to survive." The Vextar ships hung motionless in space, faced with a choice between perfect isolation and imperfect unity. The global awakening began without warning. Sarah watched from Europa's command center as millions of humans simultaneously experienced the activation of their dormant genetic memories. Ancient knowledge, buried for eons in their DNA, surfaced like a rising tide. Neural activity is off the charts, Dr. Sato reported, monitoring global medical data. It's not just random memories, it's structured, organized, like our ancestors designed this moment. Across Earth, people stopped in their tracks as understanding flooded their consciousness. Engineers suddenly grasped principles that transcended current physics. Doctors perceived the body's systems with unprecedented clarity. Children drew star maps of worlds they'd never seen. "The void mines have breached Saturn's orbit," Marcus announced, his voice tight. "But look at the ancient defense platforms." The platforms, dormant for millions of years, were transforming, not simply activating, but evolving. Just as humanity was remembering, that technology was adapting, growing, becoming something new that merged past and present. Sarah felt it too, the rush of ancestral knowledge integrating with her modern understanding. They didn't just leave us their memories, she realized. They left us their potential, the ability to take what they knew and make it into something new. The Vextar fleet, still recovering from their failed attack, transmitted an urgent message. Our sensors detect dimensional anomalies throughout your system. Your activation of ancient technology risks drawing the void mines directly to Earth. No, Sarah replied, watching as more systems came online. We're not hiding anymore. Look at the pattern of activation. The holographic display showed energy signatures spreading through the solar system like a web of light. Each human who awakened added to the network, their consciousness resonating with both the ancient technology and each other. It's not just a defense network, Dr. Seto gasped. It's an evolution of consciousness itself. The technology isn't separate from us, it's an extension of human awareness. The first tendrils of void energy reached the outer defense platforms. But instead of attacking, the platforms responded with pulses of pure consciousness, patterns of thought and emotion that made the dark tendrils recoil. Now you understand, came a new voice, the void minds themselves, speaking directly into every human mind. Why we sought to absorb you. Your potential for consciousness evolution exceeds all others. Sarah stood firm against the mental invasion. You tried to force evolution through absorption, through the elimination of diversity. Our ancestors chose a different path. The awakening accelerated. Around Earth, ancient ships rose from ocean depths, emerged from mountain peaks, transformed from what appeared to be natural formations. But they weren't crewed by remembered ancestors. They were responding to humanity's new consciousness, a merger of past knowledge and present innovation. Multiple dimensional breaches, Marcus shouted. They're trying to surround Earth. But Earth wasn't defenseless. Every human was now part of something larger, not a hive mind like the void minds, but a symphony of individual consciousness working in harmony. The ancient technology responded to this collective awareness, adapting and evolving in real time. They're not just remembering, the Vextar Admiral observed with awe. They're transcending their own history. Sarah felt the truth of those words. The genetic memories weren't chains binding them to the past. They were foundations for something entirely new. Humanity wasn't simply reclaiming their role as the first species. They were becoming something that had never existed before. All defense systems are evolving beyond predicted parameters, the Facilities A reported. Human consciousness is rewriting the fundamental protocols. The void minds pressed their attack, but each tendril of darkness was met with light that adapted faster than it could consume. Humanity's awakened consciousness, combined with their technology, created patterns of existence that the void minds couldn't absorb or understand. We remember who we were, Sarah broadcast to all channels, her words carrying the weight of both history and possibility. But more importantly, we're choosing who we'll become. And we choose to face you not as the first species, but as one among many, each unique, each vital, each free to evolve. The solar system blazed with light as humanity's awakening reached its peak, transforming not just their minds, but reality itself. In the heart of Europa's command center, Sarah faced the most crucial decision in human history. The full power of their ancestral legacy lay before her, accessible through a single command, but the cost of using it remained uncertain. The void mines have breached Mars' orbital defense line, Marcus reported, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Conventional weapons are having no effect. The holographic display showed the battle in stark detail. Council ships fought alongside Earth's awakened fleet, each species contributing unique strategies. But the void tendrils adapted to every attack, learning, consuming, growing stronger. "We have access to the full ancestral arsenal," Sarah said, her hand hovering over the central console. "Everything they built, everything they knew. We could end this now." Dr. Seto looked up from her station, her face illuminated by the emergency lights. But that's exactly what made them hide it all away in the first place. Whatever happened back then, it was bad enough to make them choose devolution. The chamber shuddered as distant explosions rocked the Europa facility. The void mines were getting closer, their consciousness probing every defense, seeking weaknesses. "They're targeting population centers now," Marcus announced. "Beijing, New York, Lagos. They're trying to force our hand." Sarah felt the weight of genetic memory pressing against her consciousness. Fragments of the past flickered through her mind, victories, defeats, and decisions that had shaped the galaxy. But one memory stood out, the moment when their ancestors chose to hide. "Show me the final recording," she commanded. The archive responded, projecting a scene from millions of years ago. A group of humans standing in this very chamber, facing a similar choice. "We could use everything we've built," the ancient leader spoke. "All our power, all our technology. We could win, but the cost..." The recording flickered. The cost would be our humanity itself. Sarah understood now. The choice wasn't between fighting and hiding. It was between becoming like the void minds, beings of pure power and consciousness, or remaining human, with all the limitations and potential that implied. "We have to choose a different path," she said, stepping back from the console. "Not the weapons, not the technology, something they can't predict or consume." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked, his eyes fixed on the battle display where more void tendrils breached their defenses. Sarah's hands moved across the controls, but not toward the weapon systems. Instead, she accessed something deeper, the core protocols that had guided humanity's role as shepherds of life. "Our ancestors didn't just guide evolution," she explained, watching as new patterns formed in the facility's energy grid. They understood it. All life adapts, changes, finds new ways to survive. Even consciousness evolves. Dr. Seto's eyes widened as she understood. "You're not going to fight them. You're going to show them a new way to evolve." The chamber hummed with power as Sarah initiated the sequence. Not a weapon, but a demonstration. The same principles their ancestors had used to guide species toward consciousness could be used to show the void minds a different path. "They think absorption is the only way to grow," Sarah said, watching as the new pattern spread through their defenses. "But we know better. Life doesn't advance through consumption. It advances through diversity, through change, through the endless dance of adaptation and choice." The void tendrils paused in their advance, encountering something they had never faced before, not resistance, but possibility. The pattern Sarah had unleashed wasn't fighting them. It was offering them a choice. "Signal the council ships," she ordered. "Tell them to hold position and wait. It's time to show the void minds why our ancestors chose to be teachers rather than conquerors." The battle for Earth's survival hung in the balance, but for the first time, Sarah felt hope. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the principle that had made humanity great in the first place. The belief that even the darkest consciousness could learn, grow, and change. The pattern that Sarah had unleashed spread through space like ripples in a cosmic pond, each wave carrying the fundamental truth that had made humanity the first teachers of the galaxy. The void mind's tendrils, poised to strike Earth, hung motionless in space. There, changing, Dr. Saito whispered, monitoring the energy signatures. The pattern isn't just affecting them, it's offering them a choice. Through the facility's sensors, they watched as the dark mass of void energy began to shift, not in attack, but in response to the new possibility before them. Millions of years of consuming consciousness, of forcing unity through absorption, confronted with an alternative they had never considered. Your species continues to surprise. The void minds communicated, their thoughts reaching every human mind simultaneously. We sought perfection through uniformity. You achieve it through diversity. Marcus tracked the readings as the void tendrils began to retreat from Earth's orbit. The Council ships are reporting similar withdrawals across the system, but something's different about the energy signature. They're not just retreating, Sarah realized, watching the pattern's effect. They're evolving, not through consumption, but through choice. The same way we guided other species, not by forcing change, but by showing them possibilities. The Europa facility hummed with ancient power as humanity's genetic memories aligned with present understanding. The knowledge of ages past merged with modern innovation, creating something entirely new. Not a return to what they had been, but an evolution into what they could become. Look at the archives, Dr. Seto called out, pointing to new data streaming across their screens. The pattern isn't just affecting the void minds, it's changing us too, all of us. Across Earth, humans felt the shift. The awakened genetic memories weren't just restoring what was lost, they were creating new connections, new ways of thinking. The council races watched in amazement as humanity demonstrated why they had been the first teachers, not because they had all the answers, but because they never stopped seeking new questions. We understand now. The void minds communicated again, their consciousness transformed. The power we sought through absorption pales before the power of chosen unity. You did not hide from us in fear. You hid to give us time to learn this truth. The dark tendrils began to take new forms, patterns of light and shadow that danced with possibility rather than hunger. The Vextar fleet, witnessing this transformation, lowered their weapons in silent acknowledgement. Sarah stepped forward, addressing not just the void minds, but all who watched this moment. Our ancestors knew that true advancement doesn't come from domination or consumption. It comes from the endless dance of diversity, from the courage to change and the wisdom to guide rather than force. The ancient facilities across the solar system pulsed with renewed purpose, their technology adapting to serve not as weapons or defenses, but as bridges between different forms of consciousness. The council races, the void minds, and humanity itself began to understand the true legacy of Earth's secret. Send word to every world, every species we ever guided, Sarah commanded. Tell them that the age of hiding is over. But this isn't a return to the past. It's an invitation to create something new together. As the message spread across the galaxy, the transformed void minds offered their own contribution, access to dimensions of thought and existence that no organic being had ever explored. Not through forced absorption, but through willing exchange. Our ancestors weren't just the first advanced species, Sarah said, watching as new possibilities unfolded before them. They were the first to understand that advancement itself is endless, that every end is just a new beginning. The Europa facility, witness to both humanity's greatest retreat and its finest return, recorded this moment for future generations. Not as a victory of one consciousness over another, but as the day when the first teachers of the galaxy proved that the greatest lesson was the courage to keep learning. Around Earth, the stars seemed to shine brighter, reflecting not just ancient light but new hope. Humanity had remembered not just who they were, but why they had chosen to forget. And in doing so, they had taught the galaxy's greatest threat its most important lesson. True power lies not in what you can take, but in what you choose to become.